To date, how many times have you been to court?
Is at least 15. I just lost count because I've been there a lot of times. That I've also now been in the Court of Appeals of Alberta and the Supreme Court of Canada, and all saying the same thing, which is basically that this was a bad thing to do for public health. My name is Chad McDonald. I've lived in Grande Prairie since at least 2013, which is around the same time that I started doing parkour here and teaching parkour here and started up APE Parkour. The idea started when I taught parkour back in Vancouver before 2013, so around 2010 to 2013 I was in Vancouver teaching parkour, and I had the idea for alternative physical education because I was doing college in Vancouver, and just, when I came up here I decided to continue with it for sports science at the college here. We started teaching at Muskasiki Park, got our own building, built up from 2015 to 2019, 60% growth a year, grassroots community, grassroots business. It was doing great.
What is the inspiration for APE?
Alternative physical education, or APE Parkour, was born out of me seeing the gap in the physical education curriculum in relation to what I wanted to give the world for health and fitness. At the time that I was studying, it was $4 billion a year that preventative disease and injury preventable by exercise would cost on the healthcare system in Canada. And so part of that is creating the demand for what I do, which is what I call a preventative health service for purposes of the Public Health Act.
So it really is an important service that you're offering to the community here. You are really filling in a niche, as well as fulfilling your own sovereign calling.
Yeah, it's my personal passion. I do have moral injury about it now, though. With the beginning of 2020 hit, we had already broken ground on this new building.
So you more than tripled the size?
Quadrupled, yeah. Quadrupled the size. Everybody was excited about it.
Well, March 2020, everything gets shut down, gets cut off.
And we're building this $3 million building at the same time.
What were the initial things that happened?
At first, when it was first announced, I literally didn't sleep for 3 nights because I wanted to respect the COVID orders and expect the need for public health protection. And I spent 3 nights coming up with a new plan to do some kind of Zoom PE parkour classes. So we actually adapted immediately. At no time did we ever contravene any of the COVID orders.
So here you are, you've completely changed your business model and to accommodate COVID.
Yeah.
And
to accommodate the Chief Medical Officer of Health orders, right? I was still trying to respect them. AHS came in, and over a 2 or 3 month period or so, while that order was in effect, they were monitoring the building. They were coming in, intruding, honestly, putting people's lives at risk of getting COVID because they were coming in.
How are you surviving personally during this time?
On December 14th, I decided that's it. I'm leaving Canada. I went for a holiday to Mexico because I could survive for like $150 a month in rent. I wasn't able to make any money here, wasn't allowed to make any money here. That was the only viable thing, and for my mental health too. Here it was like people were calling me a Nazi because you can imagine the image when you have police cars monitoring the building, being publicly accused of breaking the COVID order, and not actually had done that, been like the most respectful business possible.
So here you are, you're following the orders.
We're following the orders for the entire 2020. Sometimes the orders were changing 3 or 4 times a day, yet we would sit there and adapt to it. End of November 2020, the Crown issued all level 1 peace officers authority to enforce COVID tickets overnight and issue fines. And then at the same time, they further restricted everything by saying everything has to close to the public. So you can, pursuant to the order on December 12th, 2020, that is the order of my case, you can have one-on-one coaching and stuff like that with people from the same cohort, and a coach could be there with a mask.
You took action legally.
Yeah, but not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so
Because all this stuff, like the COVID orders themselves,
yeah.
up until the end of 2020, those aren't the reason why I started the case.
Okay.
They amped everything up with the restrictions and the authority. And then I said, you know what, that's enough. I have to come up with a way to generate revenue that isn't dependent on whether or not COVID will spread. So there has to be one single person in the building at a time. That's it. At that point, it's going to be privately demised building. We're going to close it to the public. We're not going to open it again until, and maybe never. But the idea was...
Hold on.
Yeah.
You just said in your mind there was a possibility that you would never be able to talk about that. Here you are building an empire, really, from 2,400 square feet to this beautiful space, and there's the possibility in the back of your mind that this may never open. Talk about that.
It was totally not even just a temporary thing. I was like, no, you know what? I'm going to make some kind of revenue stream, and there's no rationale behind how it's going to spread COVID. Because at that point, it wouldn't matter what the COVID orders say. If there's one person in an 8,400 square foot building at a time, then there's just no way that it's going to spread COVID.
You have these restrictions, they're knocking on the door. It's kind of crazy time.
They're not knocking on the door yet. So I have advertised out there that we're shutting it down. We're not doing any more gym, no more parkour classes. And what you can do is I'm gonna sublease. And I had a permission from the owner, and I had a lawyer overseeing it. Like I had a legal team overseeing it. It was completely legal, and we were just gonna sublease it to people who wanted to get out of the house to go do office work.
Went the other way. You really, really did everything you could.
They made us ask people to come in and just play video games and not exercise.
So you went completely a 180 from what you were doing in order to live.
Yeah. And I didn't care. I didn't care if anybody wanted to stay home and play video games and get unhealthy anymore. I just stopped caring about public health.
You kind of lost interest in public health.
Go into that. So we're renting the building. AHS doesn't like it. They come in, the executive officer of health comes in with a peace officer. The first day that we're supposed to be renting this building out to one person at a time. Doesn't have any scientific rationale, doesn't have any provisions from the COVID order that was enforced to say we were breaching. It was just threatening fines and stating that we can't rent the building, we can't collect payment from people, but if we're paying them like a janitor or a bookkeeper, there could be as many people as we want. And he said, I understand business. And it's like, no, you don't. Okay? You don't understand how you can pay staff without customers.
You've obeyed all the orders coming down, all the rules with COVID. You went and you innovated. You thought, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're in kind of survival mode.
Oh,
right?
Completely. I was, and I was locking the doors after everyone left. Like the idea was, two people can't be in the same building or the same legal unit at the same time. Well, after the people that rented the building would leave, the janitors would come in and sanitize absolutely everything in between if there was two different people coming.
This is insanity.
Fast forward, we have our special chambers hearing scheduled. Another case, Ingram versus the Chief Medical Officer of Health, gets a finding where it says that all of the impugned orders, which are the COVID orders, made by Hinshaw, are ultra vires section 29 of the Public Health Act, which just means that they found that the politicians were the ones making the final decision on the orders. What was established by the Ingram case is malfeasance of office, so meaning that they had an unreasonable interpretation of the Public Health Act and how to implement it.
And who was that?
Well, that was Hinshaw fettering her authority to the cabinet. Because of the finding in the Ingram case, I made an offer to the health departments to settle with a very reasonable settlement to get everything caught up and out of arrears. They've given me the position that they believe they're still immune, pursuant to the Public Health Act without any rationale or details behind that, because they've already stated that they have no conviction behind enforcing, like prosecuting the COVID orders anymore.
It appears that they are delaying this because they don't want the precedents. Is that correct?
And I've told them this, that unless you can convince me that there's not systemic negligence, I am going to call your bluff. I'm going to say that you don't have a position and that you just want to delay the setting of a precedent so that you're not immediately found liable for this finding.
You can just talk where your brother was at, say, in March of 2020 compared to where you were at. And
he was affected in a similar way with the illegal COVID orders. He lived in Calgary at the time, at the beginning of 2020. He has a history of mental health issues and where it would be hard for him to keep a job down. And so he was doing really good for himself over the course of 3 years up until 2020, where he held down a job at Home Depot and he had a place and he worked on his music, which was his passion.
He had strengthened himself to a point, all of the COVID stuff came on board and he was sent back into that spot.
Yeah, so imagine a person with schizophrenia, and when everybody that doesn't have schizophrenia is paranoid, right? So imagine his paranoia level. And so he went crazy into March, into the rest of the year, got kicked out of his apartment, and he was homeless. And so he was surviving in the Calgary street for the last 3 years. Let's be honest, if I didn't have my court case, I would be homeless too. Like what? The same thing happened to me. He ended up surviving, doing good, and then all of a sudden this August, like 2 months ago, the police came here and told me that he died of a fentanyl overdose. What happened with him was directly correlated, and plus there's the fact that just the drug trafficking and people not being downtown anymore is correlated with the fentanyl crisis too. And it's not a direct thing, but it's a but-for situation, which is what I blame the government. That you got to understand how I feel about this. Like it went from my building in the gym, like I don't care anymore, to okay, now you stole time with my brother. Now I could have been down there helping him. I could have, right?
You mentioned with your settlement that there's moral injury. What is the moral injury for you? How would you explain that?
The best way to explain moral injury would be that I'm a fitness professional, and that's what I dedicated my career to and my passion. And I really felt a sense of purpose about preventing disease and injury with parkour and fitness.
You're saying that there's a major disconnect between public health and the fact that exercise actually helps people?
My very first affidavit in 2021 showed print-offs of Alberta Health Services' own website and Health Canada's own websites, which said that less than 3% of the people who were affected severely or died of COVID were people with no immune system. Everyone else was preventable or reducible by exercise, 97%. So I said, you knew this, and you chose to basically hinder or impede fitness professions and basically not encourage people, and not just not encourage, people were traumatized because they couldn't figure out whether they were going to get arrested for coming to run on the treadmill, even if it was just them in the 8,400 square foot building.
What do you think your brother would be telling you now?
I want my business to go on because he was proud of this gym and everything. He would be proud of me for having a safe place for kids and stuff like that. But I think ultimately he would be, let's say, make them pay for it and then move on, and hopefully they do better and learn from it. Mm-hmm. Not just stay resentful about it, but call them out, get them to pay for what they did. Like the audacity of them, thinking that they can issue hundreds of illegal orders and have no civil liability at all. Mm-hmm. Right? So I think he would encourage, help me fight it. So
he'd want you to be fighting?
Yeah, he's helping me fight it, yeah.
What's the overriding thing that people need to know?
You just got to accept that there was no scientific rationale. What people really need to take from this and the finding in Ingram is that everyone was going around saying it was scientific. No. The court found it was political. Right on.